Well, it's nice for me to be back in church, y'all. I was gone last week. I was off in California celebrating my nephew's wedding. But 1 week, it seemed like I was gone like a month. So, did y'all notice I was gone? You should say yes, Dave. Just say yes. So I was out in California doing celebrating and officiating at a wedding. And actually, the sermon for the wedding, the notes from that wedding are in my prayer book. I found them this morning. I left them in there. So I could give you that sermon if you wanted. It's actually not so different than this one in a way, because the couple was getting married and we talked about love. And what I just said at the very beginning of the sermon, that it's always our hope that you and I begin to know God more and experience God, so that what follows then is we love God more. The two are sort of synonymous. The more you know, the more you love. In fact, everybody, I think, wants to be loved and wants to give love. And the same thing could be said, everybody wants to be known. They want other people to know who they are, and they want to know somebody else. Knowledge and love are almost the same thing. Here's that old King James translation. Whenever they wanted to talk about intercourse and sexual love in the Bible, they would translate the word, and he knew her. They want to say that when you make love, it's almost like knowing the other person. Not a bad translation. I used to think it was kind of funny, but now I think, that's pretty close. To know someone and to love someone, almost the same thing. When couples first get together, and you can say this whether you have a partner now, or you've had one in the past, or you long for one, you can always know that at the beginning of the relationship, they know a little bit about each other, and they grow in this knowledge of the other person. They can say, well, I know what they like to eat, I know their favorite movie, I know where they like to go on vacation, I know the TV shows they like. And you build knowledge of the other person, and as you get to know them more, your appreciation for them, your respect for them, your admiration of them, your love for them grows as your knowledge grows. I've talked with couples that have been together for decades, and some of them will still say, I'm still learning about the other person. There are things about them I didn't know. I just learned the other day about something. As your knowledge increases of that person, so does your love for them. And then, after they've been together for a certain length of time, they begin to know each other so well that they go to another level of knowledge. They go another step in knowledge of each other. And it's not so much the facts anymore, knowing about the other person. But you begin to know them at a different level because you've had experience with them. And instead of having to explain things, they can almost finish your sentence, right? Or they can finish each other's sentence. They know what the other person is going to say already. Or they can look across the room, and without a word, they can read the other person's body language, and they kind of know what they're thinking. They know them very deeply by how they stand, or how they look, or just their presence. They begin to know. Sometimes they even have a certain love language between themselves, like little code words, or words that embody a whole bunch of other things. Like, for instance, suppose they had a honeymoon in the Caribbean, on Martinique or something. And they had certain experiences on the honeymoon and became a part of their story. And now they don't have to say anything. They can just say, well, that's Martinique. Everybody, between the two of them, they know what that means. They have certain symbolic words, and they say, well, do you remember? And they just say, when something happened, remember? And say, Suppose they were out in the yard and something happened while they were raking leaves, and now all they have to say is, leaves. And they know. One word embodies a whole realm of meaning for them. They know each other at a different level. Not just the knowledge of their head, but now they have a knowledge much deeper at the level of their heart. Something like that can happen between us and God, the Spirit, which is such a mystery at some level. But we always begin to know, we begin to know this mystery, this spiritual presence, because we learn about God. We go to church and we learn the religious things about God. We learn the Nicene Creed, and we learn the prayer book, and we learn the outward manifestations of how our religion sees God. And that's one way to get to know the divine. It is a level of knowledge. And that's where everybody starts. But then there gets to be a transition happens where things take on a whole new meaning, because they move into that realm like a couple does when one word means so much. And it's quite personal to the couple. So between you and God, one word will embody or symbolize or signify a whole realm of meaning that's really between you and the Lord. So for instance, at the surface level of knowledge, the beginning level, when we talk about Holy Communion, and you can learn all the meanings of what it means to say bread and wine and body and blood, how you hold your hand and what the words are, and that Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me, and we take communion together. At another level, when you say body and blood to some other folks, it has a whole different level of meaning for them. And it's quite personal to them. For instance, someone told me their understanding of the Eucharist when they say, I receive the body and blood. They said, I go all week long trying to share my life and to serve other people. When I come to church, this is when I receive power to serve others. So when they hold out their hand and they take the wine and the bread and they take it inside, it's a metaphor for them for being filled up with power to go on with their life. See, I never would have thought of that myself, but this person says, well, that's between me and God. It's because I'm in love with God, and that's our little saying. When I receive the bread and the wine, I receive power to be strong again. Somebody else said, well, when I receive the bread and the wine, it's not just the formal symbol of the prayers you say and the Eucharist you do, but they take the body and blood inside, and they feel like God is entering them, and God dwells inside of them now because they put something inside. They took the drink and they took the bread and they put it inside them physically. And it's a symbol, it's a metaphor, it's a poem, it's not literal, but they said, now when I do that, I feel like God is inside of me. I said, really? I wouldn't have always given that interpretation at a seminary, but they said, yeah, that's right, because it's between me and God. This is between me and the divine. When I take the bread and the wine in, I feel like God's inside of me. That's what I mean by saying we can know God at one level, the factual, informational level, but then we can know God at the deeper level, just like lovers and beloved. First, the knowledge they have of each other is about what they like and their preferences. And at some point, they begin to have their own language together, and a single word can conjure up all kinds of meaning because they know each other at that level. At the beginning, with our relationship with God, it's sort of factual and informational, and we do what we're supposed to do, and we are devoted to that practice, and it's a very good thing. But as we grow and mature and deepen, and our knowledge expands, our love grows, sometimes single words like body or blood or shepherd or my Father's house. Those words, they take on a whole different meaning as we mature and get to know and love God in a different way. The letter we read today from Peter, is it 1 Peter or 2 Peter? Who knows? I'm just testing. Well done. Actually, I couldn't remember. The beginning lines, they use metaphor a lot that says, you are like a spiritual baby or an infant, and if you take on spiritual milk, you will grow and mature, become an adult. And then they said also, well, you're like a spiritual building, and you are being built kind of brick by brick into a holy temple. And then they shifted metaphors again, and they said, well, you're not really a priest, but you're becoming like a priest. You'll have your own connection to God like a priest has. You're being made into a holy priesthood. In all these ways, they say these are metaphors, but it shows the growth we will have and the maturing our relationship with God takes on, and the way we develop and the way we grow from infant to adult, from less mature to more mature, from beginning knowledge to deeper knowledge, from beginning love to deeper love. Just like you do with the people in your life. So it's the hope of the people in church here and the hope of the community that our relationship with God will deepen as well. And knowledge and love are almost the same thing. And it's not just knowledge about God, but it's a deeper knowledge as we mature and grow and kind of fall more in love with God. And this mystery of what you can't quite get a hold of, but is always there. So do you have any kind of a language you share or you remember sharing with someone you loved? There was like an inside joke or a secret word or a symbolic word that when you said this to them, you all knew what you meant. I can think of one or two. I'll tell you just one. It's kind of lighthearted. When I was in college, we had a bunch of rooms, 3 rooms around the common room in the dormitory. And it was an all-guys dorm. And we were either bored and maybe a little tipsy one night. And we were all sitting around the common room, which is kind of indestructible furniture, kind of like a library furniture. Almost indestructible. Lamps that you could take or leave. And we started throwing a basketball around the room, sitting in chairs and throwing this basketball back and forth. And it was an old basketball with a rip in it. And we began to tear the cover off the basketball and get to the bladder on the inside. And so we finally got the bladder off and it got to be much larger than the basketball. So we invented this game while in the midst of perhaps adult beverages. And it was called bladder ball. And we had to whack this basketball ladder around the room for hours, just laughing and laughing and laughing. Thought it was the greatest thing in the whole world. So from that day on, all we had to say to each other was, bladder ball. It was our joke. It was our code word for what a great time that was. So maybe as we mature and deepen and grow in our connection with God, maybe when a single word pops up and you say, shepherd, body, blood, those things have one meaning for everybody else, but between you and God, the one you know at a deep level, it takes you to a whole different place. So may all of us here continue to deepen not only our knowledge of God, but lead us into a deeper relationship and love of God. May you and God have secret words that are just between you and Him. So when you share them, you both know exactly what they mean. Go deeper in these metaphors and symbols and your words with God that are just personal to you. They don't have to be everybody else's. So you probably have a word or two between you and a beloved. May you also have those words with your Father above as well. What is your best word between you and God?